Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block, where we outreach and highlight community impact. I'm your host, Larry Laws. On today's segment of First Home Alliance, we have a special guest that is doing some amazing things in our community. She grew up in Southern California in a multicultural, multilingual community. She earned her graduate certificate, multi-subject teaching credential from the University of California, San Diego, and then moved to Japan to teach for 6 years. She currently teaches kids of all ages, privately and in groups. Her passion is to cultivate interest in Japanese language and culture that hopefully leads more kids to studying and working in Japanese fields in the future. She is president of the nonprofit organization SJA, Study Japanese in Arlington, that seeks to broaden opportunities for experiencing Japanese language and culture in the DC area. In her free time, she practices otinsei, Japanese tea ceremony, and enjoys time with her friends and her dog, Suso. She is a homeowner and active and a member in the church. Please welcome to our show, Miss Jennifer Swanson. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you. And Jennifer, thank you for coming in. And I want you to explain to our audience a little bit more about you and also about that tea ceremony that I have difficulty pronouncing.
Where would you like me to start? Connection with Japan, or?
Well, first I would like to know I think after you finished college, and what drew your interest to be an educator, and then why the Japanese culture?
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me. I did grow up in Southern California with a lot of kids from other countries, and there were a lot of Japanese kids. Mm-hmm. So it just turns out that my best friend in first grade was a Japanese girl who didn't speak English. And, you know, kids just form bonds without language. So she was my best friend. We did everything together. And I just thought, I'll teach her English. So fast forward to college, where I actually studied Japanese at UC San Diego. And then did a couple of study abroad experiences in Japan. Just drawn to that culture, I think, from the kindness that her mother showed me, really.
Yes.
When I was a little girl, my mother was very strict, but when I went to my friend's house, she gave us cookies and tea and things like that. Yes. And I thought, oh, this is the country that gives you cookies and tea. Right. That's where I want to go.
Okay, yes. And so the tea ceremony, mm-hmm. Was that something that you drew accustomed to in your youth, or that was later?
No, my years in Japan, I spent 6 years in Japan, first on the JET program, which is a Japanese government teaching program in Japan. And I never thought to practice any Japanese arts while I was in Japan, which regretted later, but then found that there's a very active tea ceremony community here in the DC area.
Okay.
And fell into Omote Senkei. There are different schools, but this is the school that I joined, and we practice and do the tea ceremony. It's about a 20-30 minute process of showing hospitality to your guest. I'd love to have you over sometime, and I'll serve you tea. You don't get it right away, but you do get your tea.
Okay. Have to go through the process.
The tea ceremony we practice now is about a 400-year-old process.
Okay.
Which is quite remarkable, right?
Yes.
What else have we been doing the same way for 400 years?
Wow, not much.
So it's steeped in tradition and hospitality culture, and it's one way that I connect with Japan and also can bring people in to the Japanese language and culture.
Yes. Now, your friend from childhood, mm-hmm. do y'all still communicate?
We do. Actually, she works for a Japanese airline.
Yes.
As a cabin attendant, or she's moved up in the ranks now, so occasionally she does come to DC.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen her since the pandemic, but she's still a friend.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I think maybe that you were teaching her English, maybe mm-hmm. she taught you a little mm-hmm. Japanese. Who benefited the most from that?
That's a good question, because she speaks English well.
Yes.
I don't know if that's from me, 6-year-old me, teaching her English, but anyway, she did learn English well. And then her mom is retired now, but her mom ran an English school in Tokyo for years and years. So they got that benefit. And then, of course, I got on the path of studying Japanese. And really, if you study a foreign language, all sorts of doors are open to you. Whether it's education or working for the government or military, whatever, if you know another language, there's so many doors open.
Yes, well, that's great. And so, as a child, at what age did you speak, communicate fluently?
Oh, yes. So Japanese, as you may know now from trying to say a few Japanese words, is a little bit complicated.
Yes.
The State Department ranks it as the second most difficult language. Or the second most difficult category. So after, it's up there with Arabic and Chinese.
Okay.
So
Yes.
you have to learn a whole different syllabary. You have to learn 3 different types of characters, a lot of grammar. So I passed the Japanese proficiency test after 10 years of studying.
Okay. Yes, yes. There's some other things that you're doing in the community. I've heard from family, other community members, some of the things that you're doing. Still a multicultural environment, and so. Coming up, what was some of the experiences that maybe with your friend, I understand, but some other experiences that draw you to say, yes, I like working with people?
Well, that's a good question. I guess teaching is, people go into teaching for people experiences, not for money or fame, right?
Yes.
Because we love to educate people and work with people. So the years in Japan, met many people who I'm still in touch with, musicians and artists and all kinds of interesting people. And I kind of go by the theory in life that the more you know, the more you realize you don't really know anything.
Right.
So you just keep diving in and learning new things. I think for me it happened to be Japan, but it didn't necessarily have to be Japan.
Correct.
So
Yes.
it could have been another country, but remember my mother was not like this. She just wanted to stay here and not travel anywhere, and
Yes.
she just didn't understand why I was
So that's why you kept drawing over to the Japanese family.
going over to Japan.
Yeah. Yes.
But it was always interesting. And then based in Japan, I traveled a lot in Asia and just saw that there's so many different kinds of people in the world and so
Yes.
many ways of doing things.
Yes, and you also, it seemed, a very active member in the church.
Yeah, so grew up Presbyterian.
Okay.
Grandma was a church organist and choir director. So very steeped in kind of church tradition. And the years in Japan, I attended a Japanese church
Okay.
founded by German Lutherans years ago, which was also another could have gone to the English church, but I did not. I went to the Japanese church because I thought, can't do that when I go back to America. So
Yes.
then when I came back, I dove right into a Presbyterian church in Arlington and have been a Sunday school teacher, deacon. I'm a deacon now,
Okay.
elder for 13 years. Anything that needs to be done in the church, I'm sure I've done it or been asked to do it.
Yes.
But it's exciting. I've been working with the youth
Yes.
recently, and it's the same with my work with SJA and my private life. That I really feel I should be spending most of my time and energy on kids and
Yes.
and
Yes.
youth. And
Well, like I said, I heard that there was a tragedy that happened in the community here, where you reached out to the family and basically went beyond, some of the other citizens would do in reference to extending that condolences to the family.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Domestic violence is a huge problem in our society. A very good friend of mine was murdered by her ex-husband in January, and things fell into my lap. And I'm a religious person, so I kind of believe that things work in a certain way. And I just took care of the mom in that situation. And sometimes you have to just reach out and do what's in front of you. Some people just kind of go through life without really looking around and observing what's going on around them.
Yes. Well, we appreciate you, and the community appreciate you as well. Yes. Now you have a little dog, Suju.
Suzu, yeah.
Suzu.
Where's Suzu? Did she
She's
come?
not here.
I guess she didn't come.
Yes.
She goes with me most places.
How long has she been with you?
She's been with me 10 years. She's a Jack Russell Terrier. She's very active. She's part of the family. You know, she helps teach the kids, and she almost died 2 years ago from leptospirosis. So a little plug in there for get your dogs vaccinated against leptospirosis. But again, things just sort of fall in your lap, and you just do them. And she's a terrific part of everybody's life.
Yes. Is there what's the reasoning behind her name? How did you?
Suzu is a Japanese word.
Okay.
I was trying to pick a word that American people and Japanese people and other people could say. So Suzu is a little bell that you ring, like a bell, like a southern bell.
Okay.
So she's a little bell.
Okay.
Even though most people say, look at that big boy, I say,
Really?
well, it's a girl.
Right. Yes. Okay. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about your trip to Japan and a little bit what you're doing in the area.
Thank you
so
so
let's
much.
stand by. We're about to take a short break, but before we go, I would like to remind you that First Home Alliance is a HUD-approved housing counseling agency serving the National Capital Area. If you are a first-time home buyer or a homeowner in need of mortgage assistance, please visit the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development website to find a HUD-approved agency in your area. We'll be right back after the break. Stay tuned.
With First Home Alliance. A little bit about First Home Alliance. We are a HUD-approved housing counseling agency that was established in 2002 by our executive director, Larry Law. He established the nonprofit. He established it because his mother purchased her first home at the age of 65. And everyone was like, how did you do that? Because her income was really low. And so that's how he found out about the USDA program. And so through the USDA program, his mother was able to purchase her first home. It intrigued him to see how he could help individuals basically experience the American dream of homeownership. So he established the nonprofit. Mission is to increase home ownership to low to moderate income families. And so what does First Home Alliance do?
Welcome back. You're watching Rock Your Block. I'm your host, Larry Laws of First Home Alliance. And if you're just now tuning in, we're joined today with Japanese language and culture expert, Miss Jennifer Swanson. Jennifer, before the break, we was talking about Suju, but also what you're doing in the community. And let's talk a little bit now about SJA. Are you the founder?
Actually, no. There was a group of folks that organized in 2018
Okay.
in Arlington, because Arlington Public Schools were going to cut Japanese language from the curriculum. So a group of folks organized, went to school board meetings, did that whole thing, and saved Japanese in Arlington. So the original SJA was Save Japanese in Arlington. And then we have found that organizing in the community is the way to keep Japanese language in the public schools. So we switched to study Japanese in Arlington, although you don't have to be in Arlington these days with Zoom and everything. You can be anywhere. So I've changed it again to study Japanese anywhere.
Anywhere.
So we continue that advocacy pillar of going, making sure that the teachers in Arlington are well supported and making sure there's opportunities for the kids who are studying Japanese in the public schools to have support. The other two pillars of SJA are education and outreach. So education is classes.
Okay.
And during the pandemic, we've done online kids classes, adults classes, and origami, folding paper classes. And then the outreach is these community events. And everything's free, so we've actually been using my church lawn, because we have this huge green space, to do outdoor activities, so pandemic safe activities out on the lawn. We did a Tanabata festival in the summer. We do a tea ceremony. in the fall under the full moon, and we do a spring festival. And in the winter, we were going to do something, but then Omicron and whatnot, so we moved it online and did a flower arranging ikebana workshop online.
Yes, and how large are the the community that you're working with?
So we have had at our original event in 2019, we had about 1,000 people at the Arlington Career Center.
Okay.
And then during the pandemic, we've kind of downsized things a little bit and have had about 300 people coming to events, including the virtual Japan Day in March of, I don't even know, 20 or 21, that we had I think we had 250 people participate in 11 different events online.
Great.
So that was a terrific opportunity to do outreach, and again, everything was free.
Yes. Now, the classes, are they during the school time? Is it after the regular school hours, or when are classes? When are they take place?
Classes have traditionally been on the weekends, so targeting folks that are not taking, kids that are not taking Japanese in school. And I myself have been teaching after-school enrichment for Japanese for kids in Arlington, and lots of kids want to, because of anime and manga, lots of kids are finding their way to Japan, and we find that encouraging kids from a young age to get involved with the language and culture, and then study it in high school, college, and then maybe go to Japan on the JET program, and then all these doors will open.
And so, what was your first trip to Japan? When was that?
That was, oh my goodness, I don't want to say the year. Can I whisper it to you? 1985.
Okay.
Do you remember the 80s?
Yes.
Not everybody does.
Collars.
So 1985 as an exchange student in Japan. My high school had a relationship with another high school in Japan, so kids from Japan came to California, and then we went and visited them. So that was my first trip.
Okay.
Second trip was in college, same idea. I went to Japan to study Japanese and stayed with a family, what they call a homestay. So you really get your immersion experience. And then, of course, I lived in Japan after that for 6 years.
Okay. Yes. And so, you've spent quite a bit of time there. And with that, what do you think the experience there, how did that translate to you actually bringing it here and sharing that and enriching our community?
Yeah, so living in another country, if you're open to it, you can learn the customs, the language, the atmosphere, not just textbook learning of a language and a culture, but actually learning how people think and function. So bringing that experience here has been really interesting. I don't look like I should be a Japanese speaker. I usually tell people in the beginning of my classes, I am not Japanese.
Really?
I'm not pretending to be Japanese.
Right.
I'm not appropriating anyone's culture. I'm just, I'm a learner, a practitioner as well. So.
Yeah. But I heard you speak. I mean, would you mind just counting to 10 again?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, it was even quicker.
Konnichiwa. Konnichiwa, that means hello. Konnichiwa.
Okay. Konnichiwa.
There you go.
Well, that's great. Yes. And so, and how often out of the classroom do you able to use the language here?
Well, with my nonprofit, using it all the time, teaching it all the time. I have maybe 20, 30 students learning Japanese from me right now, ranging from complete beginners to actually quite advanced folks. So it keeps me on my toes too. One of the high school kids I teach that goes to Falls Church High School, he is crushing it, and
Really?
he's wonderful. I mean, it's like a dream come true to have this kid just take off, and he's studying for the 3rd level of the proficiency exam this year, which is very hard to pass, and he loves it, and that's going to be his career. So, if I can launch or help launch one kid into a profession that he's going to love and is going to get a lot out of, then really that's the goal of being a teacher.
Yes. Okay. I visited some short, some extended time. But what was I think if you want to call it the culture shock when you actually step off the plane in Japan, what would be the most unique thing for a person that's visiting for the first time?
Japan is very organized and very clean. Trains run on time. People are polite and helpful. Everyone is looking out for each other. I think that's probably one of the most important things that I get out of living in Japan or talking about Japan is that if you find money laying on the street, someone will pick that up and turn it into the police.
Really? Okay.
And then if they don't claim it, you can get the money.
Okay.
But that's a sign, an outward sign, that people in Japan are actually putting society before themselves.
Yes.
And that's much like being in the church or something, where you're putting the church or the other folks in the church above your own needs, and then people do that for you too, right?
Yes.
So it's the
True.
golden rule, so to speak.
Correct.
So the whole country of Japan, functions on the golden rule.
Yes.
So when people get off the plane and they see things functioning and people, throwing trash away in trash cans, and there's 10 different trash cans, put your plastic here, put your tin can here, put your bottle here, and everything's very clean and organized.
That's great. Yes. Now, from your experience with the Japanese visiting the U.S., what is the most shocking thing here?
They have trouble with English.
Okay.
When we go to Japan, there's more, I think, English information available there than there would be Japanese information available here, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So when Japanese people go to a restaurant or something here and they don't speak English, it's really hard for them
Yes.
to order. Also, just basic things, asking for help, like you check into your hotel and you need another towel. How do you call down and get that? They struggle with that, and they all learn English and they all mean well, but
Yes.
it's hard to communicate.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, yes. And so, in your group sessions, are you able to identify some traits that say, with this individual, is really showing some enthusiasm, and that will be a good candidate to help move in a direction that can, actually pick up Japanese or getting a career in that area?
Yeah, Japanese language alone, I feel, doesn't propel people forward. They need another aspect, whether it's manga, anime, tea ceremony, aikido, karate, whatever, to incorporate some kind of practice from Japan, plus learning the language. So
Yes.
just learning the language in a textbook is really not enough to propel people forward. I mean, that's probably really anything in a school subject. If you have something you're involved in outside of school, that's why we have Spanish clubs or German clubs or whatever in high schools to help kids get more involved in the subject matter.
Yes. And what would be some encouraging words or parting words to encourage some others out there, maybe think in a multicultural, but maybe not necessarily which culture that they would like to study?
Well, the Japanese universities, good universities, top-ranked universities, are about $10,000 a year. So in English, so if you want to look into going to college in another country, Japan is a great place to look to. The colleges are top rate. Sometimes you can get a dual degree with a college here and there.
Yes.
And then you graduate with no student debt. Then
That's
you can
a
buy a
goal.
home.
Yes, true. Become a homeowner sooner. Yes, yes.
So I would encourage students to look into going to college in Japan, and to do that, they would need to, learn some Japanese in high school and get on that trajectory early.
Okay. All right. Well, Jennifer, I want to really appreciate you and thank you for coming in and sharing your information. An amazing experience. And again, I want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing in our community and making an impact.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thanks. I hope you enjoyed this interview and found Jennifer's passion and service in the community amazing. For more information, visit her website or send an email. Her contact information is below. Now it's time to check our inbox and see how you can help rock your block. This is where we share recent questions sent to us from you, our viewing audience, about financial stability and housing. Today's question comes from Woodbridge, Virginia. I have a lot of credit cards, and the interest I'm paying is ridiculous. How can I reduce my credit card debt? This is a good question. There are two ways to attack credit card debt. One way, power pay. It's also called the avalanche method. The avalanche method, basically you gather all your credit cards up and you attack the one with the highest interest. You set aside a certain amount of money, pay minimum payments on the others, and attack the largest one with the largest interest. The one with the largest interest rate, that's where you're wasting your money. And then once you pay that one off, you move to the next credit card. That is called power pay with the avalanche. The second way to attack a credit card debt is the snowball method. This is where you pay off the smallest one. You line all your credit cards up and you go with the one with the smallest balance. Attack that balance and then use the funds from that one to attack the next one, then to the next one. And so those are the two methods of crashing a credit card debt. I'm Larry Laws of First Home Alliance, and it's been my pleasure sharing with you our mission and highlighting the impact of our services. If you have questions about financial fitness or how we can help make your dream of homeownership a success, send your question to our inbox at help@firsthomealliance.org. Then tune in to the next show to see if your question was selected to be shared with our audience. You can easily get more information about our services by visiting us on the web at firsthomealliance.org. Thank you for watching today's segment of First Home Alliance, and join us next time to rock your block.
Glad to know that, some of this stuff about credit and buying houses is written down somewhere. A lot of the times it's always hearsay, like other friends or family members who have bought houses before, but they can never, tell you legit what you need to get done and do before buying a house.
I definitely think this class should be required for all first home buyers because a lot of times the real estate agent doesn't explain the process to you. So I think this is very important.
It's from the credit up to receiving a loan, and the most important thing is the process that you go through when you're buying the house, and there are a lot of process which you don't have idea about that before you take this class.
Speakers who came up and spoke about each section, they were very knowledgeable in their field, and I felt like it was relatable. They didn't just throw out a whole bunch of terms that went over my head, but they really explained it in a way to where I understood it, and I could even explain it to my children, and it was even easier for me to take home and kind of remember and process and apply to my next steps. The process was amazing.
They start first with the class before even finding a lender or agent. So I did all that and I wasn't able to purchase, and then I was like, you know what, there's a lot of information I'm not aware of. Let me just start from the beginning to put everything on hold. Start from
Piecing the information together, because you've heard things about the loans and about this and about the credit, but this is like a summary, and it just gives a clear flow of where to go with what you have and kind of building up a plan. So that kind of gives me a whole picture of where I needed to go and how to get there.